Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Terri Summey. I'm one of the librarians here. And today we're going to talk about the literature review. Not necessarily how to write the literature review, but how to get to that step of writing. I will tell you, I've been a librarian here for a long time. I have also been working on my PhD, so I'm in the middle of writing my own literature review. I turned in the first document a week ago. I got my comments back, so I need to learn better how to write a literature review. But I can do the research for it, and so that's what we're going to really concentrate on today, is how do we get to that point where we start putting the words on paper. So I'm going to have you guys spend a little bit of time, a couple minutes, introducing yourself. Just tell me what your name is, what department major you're in, and what kind of project are you working on, and then what stage of your project are you at. So, for example, I said my name is Terri Summey. I am in the library, but as a student, I am also a PhD student with the School of Library and Information Management. I am working on my dissertation proposal, so I'm in the midst of writing 3 chapters for that. And that's the stage I'm at, is I've turned 1 chapter in on my literature review. I am now working on my methodologies chapter. And obviously, I need to go back now to my literature review chapter and rewrite it, start taking stuff out and start to focus it a little bit more and rewrite it. So we'll start over here with you.
My name is Morgan Gibson, and I'm a library information science student. I am working on a database project, actually, for information technology class, and just beginning it.
Okay.
My name is Jim. I'm an IT major, and right now I'm just looking for a project, looking for a topic that I'm going to work on. My class is contemporary issue in
Okay.
education.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Still, I don't know where to start.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, my name is Qian, and I also major in IDT, and I'm now doing a project just like solving an instructional problem.
Okay.
And the stage I'm working on is, I think, is the identification of the problem.
Okay. Okay. Bethany?
My name is Bethany O'Dell, and I'm in the IDT and in the School of Information and Library Science program. And I'm working on a project about distance education learning. And we're actually putting together scripts to do like videos. So I'm in the stage of writing and doing the research for how to use a script.
Okay, cool. So we've all got projects that we're working on in different stages. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to look at the purpose and the requirements of a literature review. We're going to talk about developing strategies to search for those research materials. And then we're going to talk about how do we critically assess those research materials. So when you hear the phrase literature review, what words come to mind? What do you think of?
A lot of research and articles.
A lot of research and articles?
A lot of reading.
A lot of reading? Anything else? I think sometimes maybe we look like this, where we're overwhelmed and we have a lot of reading, a lot of articles, thinking about what's out there. And I know I can tell you, I've been at that point where I've wondered, there is so much out there. How am I ever going to read everything? Well, we'll talk about that. It may also seem like we're trying to stuff a whole library into our brain. And so that's what this image is with the library and the brain. What I want to get us to is here, so that we are successful, we're standing on top, we're ready to conquer it, and we can move forward. So I want to be the person at the top of that mountain here pretty soon with my arms up saying, I was successful, I was able to do it. Kind of like in the old Rocky movies where you have Rocky Balboa, the boxer that runs up to the top of the stairs is victorious at the top. So that's what I want to end up with. So I want to help you get to that point too. So what is a literature review? And this guy over here doesn't quite ready for it. It may be comprehensive, depending on what area you're looking at or what field you're looking at. It may be trying to look at all the literature that's been published in an area, knowing what's there. But you want to look at things that are relevant to what you're looking at. So that's one issue that I really struggled with, and I've gotten better with practice. So as with everything, practice helps you make perfect. So I've gotten better to look to see what's relevant. Systematic. It is good to be able to have a system that you're using and go through it systematically, where you go through and you've got particular steps. And I'll show you some tips and tricks later that I'm using to kind of do that, to be systematic about it. Basically knowing where you're searching, keeping track of what terms you're using, looking at what years you're searching, so that you have an idea of what you're doing. And there are tools in some of our databases that can help you out with that. Explicit, having an explicit one to be able to explain the concept. And then reproducible means that others can go through and find that literature. Be able to look and see how you came to those conclusions. So I'll talk a little about those as we move on. Getting started. Now I debated whether I should put a racetrack here or not, because in the group that I'm working with, do you guys know the story of the tortoise and the hare? Okay, so that's an old fable where the hare is really, really fast and is ahead of everybody, and then he kind of takes a nap, slows down a little bit, and the tortoise, who's going very slow and methodically, ends up passing him up and winning at the end. Well, in our PhD cohort, I knew my topic very early, so maybe I was the hare, but now I think I'm behind, but it's not a race. So that's why I debated whether I should put race up there or not, because it isn't a race. It's just a matter of going through it your own time and getting it done. Now, you might have deadlines on your projects, so in those sense, you do have a deadline that you have to make, so maybe that's the way it is kind of a race, because you have to make it to that deadline. But thinking about it as you're getting started, what's the purpose of your literature review? For mine, it's to talk about my topic, but also to explain what has happened in the field. I'm looking at the emotional intelligence of reference and public service librarians in academic libraries. So I want to talk about what is happening in libraries, what has changed in libraries, how students are using academic libraries and faculty. So, and then also, what are the skills that librarians need to be successful? And so those are all things that I'm looking at. So the purpose of my literature review is to explain, kind of build up to my topic, so that I can start looking at it, kind of show what has been happening in the field. And that's a lot of what we do in terms of it. Or it might be a comprehensive one. It just really depends on what you're writing and what your purpose is. It may be explaining why you looked at your topic. It may be explaining why your topic is important. With the need, what is the instructional need and how can you solve that? So you may need to look and see how have other people solved that same need. Who's your target audience? Are you writing for a paper for your professor and your fellow students? Are you writing for a journal? So you're writing for professionals in the field. So thinking about who are you writing for? And then what is your final product? I said, thesis or dissertation. Are you writing a journal article? A grant proposal. When you put a grant together, a lot of times you need to do some background research to show what has been done. And then it might be a class assignment, and many of you are working on class assignments. Some of you, especially the IDT students, eventually you'll have to do a bigger project, and in doing that final big project, it's kind of like a thesis dissertation. It's just a project. So it's similar to that, but not quite. So what's the purpose? As I said earlier, one of the purposes is to provide that background information, to be able to talk about what is happening in a field or what is happening on a research topic. Looking at the trends, how has that topic changed maybe over the years? So like I said, one of mine is looking at libraries and librarians, the role of librarians, which has changed. I've been here at Emporia State in libraries for almost 30 years. And in that time period, things have changed very rapidly. I'll tell students, I remember the day they brought a computer over to us and set it on a table, one computer, set it on a table, and said, "You now have internet." We looked at it and said, "Okay, what does that mean?" Had no idea that today the internet would be everything, would kind of control everything we do, right? Or is in everything we do. I had no idea I'd be carrying around a mini computer in my pocket. Didn't even dawn on me. Back then we had some cell phones, but they were big things in a suitcase practically. So being able to outline trends, and so through that time libraries have changed, and so I'm able to look at that to see how that has changed. Be able to look at where there's been a lot of literature written, and maybe there hasn't been so much written. So be able to look for where there's gaps. To talk about why you feel your topic is important. So, for example, with your statement of your problem, why is that a problem? Why is that important? That's one of the things you're going to want to show to look at research as to why maybe that's important. Or you need to look at current issues. So in yours, it's why is that an issue? Why is that something that people should care about? I hear a lot about wanting to be able to explain what is the so what factor. So I can say, this is what I'm interested in doing, and they'll say, so what? Why does that matter? So being able to help show why it's important. Also, one of the things to be able to read the literature in an area is to become familiar with that so you can talk about that. So when I first started with emotional intelligence, it sounded like a really cool thing. I heard it in a class. I connected it with what I do, and I thought, that would be a great topic to research. I didn't know at that time if it had been researched. I found out later. I didn't know at that time. I kind of knew what it meant, but I didn't know everything. And so I had to read a lot and start my literature review to become more familiar with it, to understand, to know what work had been done with that. And to position yourself in the scholarly conversation. And I got an extra A in there. In the scholarly conversation. So scholarship, what we do when we write journal articles, when we write dissertations, when we write papers, that's all part of a scholarship, a conversation that happens. So when I go to conferences, I talk to my colleagues. I have friends that are in libraries around the United States, and I talk to them and we share ideas. And so that's an ongoing conversation that happens where we can talk about those ideas and we can share ideas and we can share what we're learning. So it's a conversation that's always ongoing. And it might be in journal articles that are published, it might be in theses and dissertations, but it might be an email, or it might be a blog posting, or it might be a reaction to an article. So this scholarly conversation is always ongoing. So the three of you that are in the IDT program, do you talk to your other students about ideas you're learning in class?
I think maybe in class.
Maybe in class? Yeah. Yeah, you have discussions and the professor listens to you And you have different perspectives, right, that you can provide. Morgan, do you talk to your fellow SLIM students?
I do all the time, in class and outside of the class.
Yeah. And can talk to professors too. So it's a conversation that's always ongoing. But you can identify where there's potential gaps, where has research not been done, and establish a need for the current project or any future projects that might be there. And so we'll talk about some of that where I can find out what some of those gaps or knowledge or needs are. So a literature review summarizes the literature, but you also synthesize it, where you're not just saying this is what it's all about, but you're also providing ideas, a synthesis of what it is. Being able to say, not only am I telling you what it's about, but this is what I think. And putting all those ideas together. And comparing the different ideas or the different articles that people have written or the different studies. And also being able to critique something. Say, you know, this article might have been good. They found this. However, they didn't look at enough people. Or maybe their methodology was a little, you know, something could have been made better. So being able to look at all of these different things when you're putting it together a literature review. So one of the critiques that I received back recently was to put more of myself in my literature review. What that tells me is I probably did a pretty good job of summarizing. And because I used to be a history English major, I like to use words. So I probably had a lot of words in there summarizing. But I probably didn't do enough critiquing and synthesizing. I may have synthesized it a little bit, but I need to put more of my voice in there. What do I think? What did I get from the readings? What does it mean to me? So this is just kind of a wheel that has the different steps of the literature review. So your first step, and you said you were on that, is you have to find a topic, right? Yeah, so sometimes that's one of the hardest steps. Research shows that when students get an assignment, first thing they do is they go, oh no, how do I do this? You know, can I do this? Am I going to fail? Am I going to pass? You know, they've done research on emotions with things like that. And what selecting a topic is one of the harder things to do. Because you're like, how do I start there? Then we go around, and so we're going to talk about selecting a topic. We're going to look at searching the literature and how we do that. Not talk so much about developing the argument and critiquing and writing it, but mostly what I'm going to talk about is selecting the topic, searching it, and surveying the literature. Just to kind of show you what the library piece of that is. I will also tell you the slides, I did not print them off. I'm going to make them available on the library website. There's a library guide with this information, so the slides will go out there. All right. So selecting a topic, how do you pick a topic? What I tell people, find something that you're interested in, something that you're curious about, something that you want to know more about, something that you can be passionate about. Because if you're not engaged with the topic and you're not curious, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to put it off. So something you want to know more about. It might be related to professional interests. So when I selected my topic, I thought, you know, emotional intelligence, that sounds fascinating. I want to know more about that. But I went with academic reference and information services librarians because that's what I am. That's what I do. So it's related to my professional interests. Maybe it's something heard in class, and that's where I did. I happened to hear the concept emotional intelligence. It was either in a class or it was at a conference. I heard somebody talking about it, and I thought, you know, I really like that idea. I wonder if it's been studied. Can I move forward with that? Or other places that you get ideas. Do you have any other ideas that you might get ideas from? Reading articles, looking at your textbook, talking to professors. Are there other places you guys have gotten ideas?
I've gotten ideas from volunteering in different areas, and so that kind of just has expanded my viewpoint of different topics.
Okay, so ideas from volunteering and different life experience. There's different experiences. Other places.
I find my ideas usually from social media, like what I see on my Twitter and
Okay, so ideas from social media, which is coming from Twitter or from other people in that area. Yeah, I get ideas from my colleagues that are on Facebook. Yeah, so I'm probably still old school right now because I think all the younger people have moved off Facebook, but I have friends that are on Facebook, so I'll get ideas from there, get ideas from articles. Do you guys have places you get ideas?
When I'm doing my assignment, and also some ideas come out just from my head.
Just come from your head? Yeah, I get that too. You know, some of my best ideas come when I'm driving, walking, or in the shower in the morning. Is where I have some of my best ideas. I don't know if it's the hot water running on my head, maybe it wakes everything up, I don't know. But yeah, so a lot of things that we hear, things that we see. Some ideas might come from visiting libraries, for me, libraries and seeing something I don't like. You know, and to say, oh, we could make that better. Or we could do that better. So yeah, selecting a topic is one of the things. But like, it really comes back to what are you going to be curious about? What are you going to be engaged with? What is going to be exciting to you? And then searching the literature. Yeah, so this says look for a scholarly article, found one in a database. So I'm going to jump in a little bit and we're going to talk about some of the literature that's out there, some of the databases. We're going to look at academic databases that we have here. We're going to talk about how can you search multiple databases and what are the advantages of that. And then we're going to look at some discovery tools and talk about that. We have our ESU discovery tool and then we've got Google Scholar. Just some tips and tricks that you can use in finding resources. So I'm going to go a couple more slides and then I'll pop out and we'll go to that. Some different search strategies. I'll talk about using keywords, author searching. So once on my dissertation, once I knew what my theoretical framework was going to be, there was an author that created that theoretical framework. So I knew the main authors in that area, so I knew I could conduct and do searches for those authors. I also knew that one of the individuals that is on my committee has written some articles. So do you think I searched for her articles too? Yeah, definitely. I wanted to know what she had written on the topic. And I even included one in my literature review. I don't know if it'll stay there, but I included it in the beginning. I'll talk about footnote chasing and bibliographies. One of the things that I always do when I am looking at an article that I really like, something that intrigues me, I go look at the bibliography. Because that will help me in my literature review to see what they cited. Because that has helped me then expand out. It's kind of like, and we haven't had snow here, so it's this year really, but it's like a snowball. And you know, when a snowball, it starts out, you've seen where it starts little and maybe it keeps going downhill, it gets bigger and bigger, right? And it keeps, if it's going down like a big mountain, maybe it's picking up people and things as it goes along, but it just goes bigger and bigger. So that's what a lot of these techniques are, is making that snowball bigger. How do you expand what you're looking for? And looking at bibliographies and looking at those footnotes, looking to see what sources they used in the article that was good is a good way to find resources. Citation tracking. That is looking at who has cited a particular article. So for I have my theoretical framework that I'm using for my study. I'm going to see who else has used that. What other articles have used that framework in their study? So I'm going to look to see who cited those articles. So if there's a good, what I would call a seminal article in that area, the person that maybe designed the theory that I'm using wrote an article, I want to know who's all cited that, and I'll show you how to do that. Knowing where you've been, keeping track of what you've searched, where you've been, what databases you've used, what years you've searched, what terms you've used. So really being organized and knowing what you've already done. It might be good to set up a table on a Word document or set up a spreadsheet so that you can write down and keep track of what you've already done, especially if it's a big project. Review articles. So review articles are literature review articles, which means the review articles have taken a small maybe piece of your topic, and they've gone out and they've looked for the literature on that, and they've summarized it and synthesized it. So that's a good place. They're called secondary sources because they're not really telling you about their own research, but they've gone through and they've gathered that information, so they're helping you out. So review articles are a great place to go to get other resources. And so I read the review articles to understand the topic better, and then I go right to the bibliography and look to see what sources they cited. And keeping this knowing where you've been kind of builds into this search history or this log. And something I will also show you, a lot of our databases allow you to sign in and allow you to keep that search history. So you can save your search so you know where you've already been or what you've been searching. Any questions so far? I know I've been doing a lot of talking. Okay. So let's break it down. Because one of the things, and I'm not going to break dance, just letting you know that. I can't do moves like this. So one of the things that I think people run into problems with is how do we, when you have a topic and you want to go out and you want to find literature on it, and maybe you've got a pretty narrow topic and you search it and you don't find anything. And so then it's like, okay, I can't find anything on my topic. I'm going to have to change my topic. Not necessarily. So, for example, I'm going to use my own topic as a good example. And I think I'm going to move over to the board. So, when I started doing research on my own topic, I was looking at emotional intelligence, academic, public service, or reference, librarians. Okay, so what are my concepts in there? What are my topics in there? What's my first topic in there?
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence. So this is one of the things I'm interested in. What's another one? Public service and reference librarians. And then another one, and I can put libraries under here. Okay. First time I did a search with all three of those concepts, I didn't find very much. Because there's been very little research done on emotional intelligence with public service reference librarians in academic libraries. So I could have said, okay, no research there, I give up, can't do it. But I don't. That's where you have to break it down. And that's what I was talking about your topic, want to break it down. So I break it into components to the different pieces. So one of the things I went out and read and searched was emotional intelligence. What research has been done on that little piece, on emotional intelligence? To look. And so in reading that, I discovered that there's basically two models. There's an ability model and there's a mixed model. And I found 3 main authors, but some other authors within that. So I went out and I did my own studies on that. Then I looked to see what has been done, not even on academic libraries, but what's been done with emotional intelligence in libraries. And I looked at that research. So I've got a section that talks about that research. I also have a section that talks about, remember I talked about that changing academic libraries? So I talk about what academic libraries have done. So I did research on academic libraries. And then I did research on public service and reference librarians in academic libraries. And I did research on the skills, the competencies, the people skills, abilities, that are needed. So instead of taking the topic as a whole, because in doing that, I probably, if I just looked for articles on those 3 things together, I might have had 2 articles. And that is not a literature review for a dissertation. So one of the things to do, and I think that's one of the things that students struggle with, is taking that topic and being able to break it down. For example, worked with a student that wanted to look at the use of technology to teach math in elementary school in China. So we maybe did a search on teaching math, elementary school in China, and technology. Maybe found 1 article, not very much. So we needed to break that down. So to do that, we would have China, technology, elementary schools or primary schools, and math. But if we can't find all of those, we can look to see how has technology been used to teach math? How has technology been used in elementary or primary schools? Maybe in China, maybe not. How is technology used in schools in general in China? So taking your topic, breaking it down into smaller parts, and then what I need to do after I read all of that and I summarize it, that's where I synthesize it and I come to my own conclusions. So when I looked at mine, I thought, you know, this is what emotional intelligence is. These are the skills that are needed by librarians in changing academic libraries. And I think these skills are the same thing that's emotional intelligence. So even though nobody has studied that and said that, I want to know, because I think librarians, reference librarians should have a higher level of it. I want to know if they do have a higher level of it. That then started my research question. Do reference and information service librarians in academic libraries have a high level of emotional intelligence? Do they have those people skills? But I couldn't find those articles to begin with, so I had to break it down. Does that make sense? Okay. when we start doing that, then we have to go to the computer and do our databases, and we have to talk to the databases the way they understand. Because we can't just go to the databases and put our topic in and hope that it comes up with information. All right, so talked about academic databases, one of the things I said I would talk about. Our library has access to 135 databases. That's a lot of resources. We do have them divided down. So right now they're in alphabetical listing, but we do have one where it talks about all subjects, where we take the subjects and we divide it down. Now, instructional design is unique because depending on where you want to be, it covers a lot of different subjects. So it might cover business if you want to go work in a company. It might cover education if you want to work in an education field. My husband, when he went through the program, he was working in a police department. So we had to look at like crime and criminal justice type things and business to find information for his projects. So we've broken it down. Another way that you can use to look and see what databases are in an area is we have created library guides in the various subject areas. And so there is a library guide for instructional design and technology. And what that will do is we go through with those. And a lot of times we'll list out the different databases that are helpful to use in doing the research there. So we've gone through and we've created guides for the different subject areas and said, these are good sources that will be helpful to you. Now, a bunch of our sources come from two main companies. We have ProQuest databases and we have EBSCO databases. So those are two companies that put out those databases. So I'm going to click on Education Abstracts. Which brings up, this is out of EBSCO. Now, if I'm looking for information, especially if I'm looking for something that's interdisciplinary, SLIM is interdisciplinary. IDT is interdisciplinary, which means that you can find stuff in lots of different subject areas. I can use this and I can search more than one database at a time. So over here, right where it says searching and above the search box, it says choose databases. So I can click on choose databases and it gives me a list of all the different databases that are available. And if I'm not sure what they are, there's these little yellow speech bubbles. I can highlight over that and it will tell me what's in that database. So if I'm looking at the technology in elementary schools, in math in China, I'm probably going to want to do education databases. So I already have education abstracts checked. I might want to go with ERIC because that's also an education database. I maybe want to go with Teacher Reference Center and Professional Development Collection are all reference databases or all education databases. Maybe I'm interested in designing a training program that might have some business aspects. So I can include a business database. Or maybe I'm looking at my own topic. That in my topic I might do education, I might look at business, I might look at psychology, and then also at library literature. So it gives me a lot of different things. So now I've clicked on a bunch of things. If I click on OK, I'm searching, it says now show all, because I'm searching a lot more databases. I'm searching about 8 databases at one time. And so it helps me that I'm not having to go into each database individually. Because one of the things I might want to know, emotional intelligence, and some of that's in psychology. So some of the things I was looking at was, are students anxious when they come into the library? Or how do I work with students that might be anxious and psychologically upset when they come into the library, or maybe stressed? So looking at that, I can go in there. So I'm going to go ahead. So if I put in I'm not putting all the words in I could. So I put in emotional intelligence and academic libraries and reference librarians. When I put those ands in between it, what I'm saying is, don't just find everything on emotional intelligence. I want to know what's been done on academic libraries and with reference librarians. So I'm going to show you how this plays out. I'm going to start with just emotional intelligence. So when I do a search on that, I get 6,827 articles. That's a lot. Okay? What I want to know, what's been done though with academic libraries. So I put in the word and I put in academic libraries. Now I'm down to 37. Right? So if I put in and reference librarian, it came up with 26,000 because we didn't find anything. So what it did was it looked for every word. So when I put in reference librarians, it didn't find anything. So let me try just reference. Still didn't find anything. So that's what I ran into. When I first started looking for this, I thought, I'm not seeing anything. Although here's one that might be good. The second one would be an investigation of training needs on the emotional intelligence of academic librarians. So if I broaden it out a little bit and I say academic librarians, then I might be able to find it. So let me change that to librarians. So now I'm down to 5. So remember I started with 6,800, then I went to 37, now I'm at 5. So that's where I need to break it out, and I need to look to see what's been written on emotional intelligence, and what's been done with emotional intelligence in libraries, and what's been done with emotional intelligence in librarians, and what's been done with people skills and competencies with librarians. If I search those, then I can find more things and I can start going through those. Make sense? Okay, so that's searching all those. The ProQuest system works the same way. Go back here to the main screen of the library. The other thing I had on that screen was a discovery tool. This is what we call a discovery tool. What that means is that it helps you discover a lot of different items in different databases. So when you're searching here in this search box, you're searching what's in our library, but you're also searching what's in libraries worldwide. So all over the world. So millions, maybe even billions of items are searched through this. Plus it searches one database, but I can search other databases by going into advanced search. And over here, it says I've selected 3 databases, but I can go in and I can look at the other databases that are here, and I can pick more. So if some of the databases that I want to search, like the library ones, are there, I can click on those, and I can add them to my search, and maybe the psychology one is there. Eric is education, I can add that in. And then save my changes, and now it tells me I'm searching 7 databases. So once again, when I go in here, I can put in emotional intelligence, and I can put in librarians, and I can search to see what's been done with emotional intelligence of librarians. And so it found some books. It found 17 books and 422 articles or chapters. So it provides all that information there, and I searched libraries worldwide. So if I switch and I go to Emporia State University only, then it gives me, it's thinking. Now I went from 21 books to 4 books, and was it 400 articles to 64 articles. So it cut down what I was looking at. So a discovery tool allows you to search for lots of different things. Another place that I will go and do searches, especially if I'm trying to find a topic, is Google Scholar. How many, have you guys used Google Scholar before? No? Yes? I'm getting yes and no's. I'll tell you, I like Google Scholar for a couple reasons. One is, if I want to know what's been published on something, I can do the same thing. I can put emotional intelligence, librarians in there and search, and it's going to tell me what's been done on that. But it's looking at emotional intelligence in a variety of different things. So not only librarians, but it's looking at some different things. So like this one is out of the Annual Review of Psychology. That tells me that's a review article. Remember I told you review articles are good to use their citations to figure out who they cited. The other thing that the other thing that Google Scholar does a couple things. Remember I talked about citations, chasing, getting the citations from other places? This will tell me, so like this article, emotional intelligence, what traits are the most prized? Let's say that's a really good article that I want. This tells me that 55 other people or articles have cited that article. So if I click on that cited by 55, that gives me all of those articles. And so it gives me some other things that maybe I could use in my research. So it's a very good way. And see, and then these are all cited. Like this one is cited by 32. So that's my snowball growing, because I'm looking to see who all they've cited. If it's a good article that I really like, that's very useful, then I will go through and I will look to see who cited it. So the theoretical framework that I'm using is Baron, emotional intelligence. So if I do a search, I get information about Baron and his test. And I can go through and I can see and pick one of those. And so like this one, emotional and social intelligence, written by Baron, it gives me, it's been cited by 1,373 other people. So that gives me other articles that might be useful in what I'm doing. So that's a way to look to see who has cited something, be able to look at citations. So when I have an article that's good, I look to see who they cited in that article, and then I'll take that title of the article and I'll put it in Google Scholar to see who cited it. It's a good way to get other resources. All right. One of the things that I learned, though, is you can't read everything. You're not reading for a test. You're writing your literature review, but you're not going to be tested over it. So you aren't really reading to remember everything that you're reading. You'll pick up some of the ideas and the concepts, but you're not going to remember all the methodologies. You're not going to remember all the conclusions. So you're not reading for a test. You want to take away the most important things. You want to read with your question in mind. What do you want to know? So with IDT, what is the problem? What are you wanting to know about? So if I'm trying to figure out how to use technology to teach math to elementary students in China, that's my problem. So I'm reading to find out how has technology been used to teach math so that I can use that for my solution. When you're reading your papers, I've learned to skim. I don't read word for word anymore on these. I start with the abstract, because what is the abstract? A summary. Yeah, it's a short summary. So sometimes just by looking at the abstract, I can say, yes, this paper is going to help me, or no, this paper is not going to help me. Then I look at the results and their discussion to see what did they find out, and what does it mean. I look at their methodologies, and last, because the introduction is a mini literature review, I'll look at that last. I want to find out where were the authors going? What was their purpose and where did they go? And what is my takeaway from the resource? What did I get from that? What notes? And so you have to have a method. One of the things that I use big note cards that are about this size, and I just take notes on those. I've also typed them into a Word document and then cut the pieces apart. So what is my takeaway? What do I take out of there? What is most important that I got out of that source? Because when you're doing a literature review, you're not going to describe every source and spend like a page summarizing everything or even a paragraph. You're just going to mention it briefly. And then as your question evolves, there may be articles you need to go back and reread. As I was looking at my methodologies the other day, I was rereading a couple articles that I wanted to make reference to. So when you're gathering information, these are some questions you might want to ask. Who is the author? What are their credentials? What have they done? What is their purpose? And usually in the beginning of that article, right after the literature review, right before they get to the method section, they will say, our purpose in writing this article is. And a lot of times you'll even find that in the abstract. It'll say, the purpose of this article is. I always note that. What is the purpose? What is the theoretical framework? What theory was used in this? What methodologies did they use? Who were their participants? Who's the intended audience? I don't always make note of the intended audience, but that's something to look at. Who were they writing the article for? What is their principal point that they're trying to make? What conclusions did they discover through their experimentation? What is their thesis or their question? So a lot of times I'll write down what is their research questions or what are their hypotheses, and I'll note those. What evidence do they provide, or what did they come up with? Did they have alternative explanations? How does it fit into the context of the topic that you're looking at? Does it cite studies that you've seen before or cite studies that could be good for you? And is it cited by other studies? However, the most important thing is, so this is a form that you can use. If you wanted to, this is just like a table or a spreadsheet, but this would be a way to organize it. Like I said, I use cards is where I've organized mine, but here this would be where you could put the author, the title, the purpose of the study, sample participants, who did they use in their study, what methods did they use, what intervention did they use, what were their findings, did they say there was a need for future research. A lot of times at the end of an article, they'll talk about what are their limitations, what could have been done better. And they'll also talk about, we think that more research could be done in this area. So if you're looking for ideas sometimes for research studies, that's a good place to look, is at the end of the articles on a topic that you like, because they'll say, more research needs to be done in this area. And then, what is your assessment of that article? Is it good? Does it meet your needs? What did you pull out of that article? So this is one way to gather it. But your most important question to ask is, what does this study add to your project? And that took me a while to get to this point, where I could look at an article and say, you know what? This looks like a fantastic article, but it's not relating to my question. It's not going to add anything to what I already know, and I put it aside. Because if I tried to read all of the literature on emotional intelligence, I was going to be doing this for my entire lifetime. So I had to get to the point where how is it relevant? What is this going to add to what I'm trying to do? So in order to select my resources, I had to find ways to organize. And we're going to be doing some more workshops on some ways like Zotero and Mendeley and some other resources that are out there that you can use to electronically organize things. I told you I just use cards. I've got a folder at home that has all my note cards in it, and I've got them organized by topic. All of the articles that I read, I have file folders, and I have them organized. They're in a file cabinet that I can carry with me if I wanted to. A friend of mine, a colleague, organized hers in binders. So each binder had a different subject on it. But find a way to organize your information so you can get back to it if you need to. Be able to sort through your information, find ways to be able to get through and get what you need. So I use, like I said, I use my cards, and I've got them divided by subject, and I put key terms. So I've got a bibliography that has the terms on it. I created terms for it. So if it's about emotional intelligence, I said it was about emotional intelligence. If it was emotional intelligence and leadership, I said emotional intelligence, leadership. If it was about the Goleman model of emotional intelligence, I said Goleman, emotional intelligence. So I made it so that I could get back to those by putting terms there. But you need to select the most relevant to your project, and I put a devil up here. He's kind of cute. You want to, you don't want to resist. You kind of want to, oh, he's kind of cute. He's not harmful, right? No, resist temptation. You want to, that's where, I started, when I first started, was reading a lot of the articles too much. I read too much. So, and I was keeping things I really didn't need. I was reading things I didn't need to read. So resist the temptation, pick the things that will help you with your project. If it's not going to be helpful, then put it aside. Read it later. And then the last thing, after assessing your literature, after you go through, you're getting ready to write it. One of the things is that these are those so what questions. Why should this problem or topic be further researched or studied? And what contributions will my study make to this? So what? Why is that important? So when you're doing your literature review, and I told you, when you're researching, you might have to break your pieces apart. And that's what I did. But when I brought it back together, I could say, to be a good reference and information services librarian in today's academic library, you need to have these skills, and these skills relate to emotional intelligence. So, in order to be a good reference and information services librarian, you need to have a high level of emotional intelligence. And that has not been studied. And that's where I came up with my study to say, I want to know if somebody is very good at their job, do they have a high level of emotional intelligence? And that's a question that I think I could ask a lot of different ways. when I get done with this one, then I could look at further research. You know, I could look at somebody who's working in the job, see what their level is, and maybe, you know, do customer service, quality control on that. So there's a lot of different things that can help me research or study. But why is that important? Why should this be looked at as something to really consider?